Right. Lovely. Who have we got? Oh, well, you all know the routine. You could probably do it quite easily without. If ever I'm not here, one of you can probably just do it, I think. Say the same things each week, but that's kind of how it goes. Just settle in. And remember, this isn't always about having to learn new things or to improve things or whatever. This can be simply a case of enjoying the practice. And I think particularly with the most basic exercises, it's always nice to come back to them. Since 1983, I've learned any number of sort of forms and exercises and so on and so forth. But I have to say, the form that I originally learned, which is a relatively short one, 24-step, always feels like coming home because I know it so well, and I've done it, I don't know how many times, and it's changed and grown with me over the years, and I've grown with it and so on and so forth. And it's actually just very, very nice to come back to, and quite often things that have cropped up and ideas that have occurred in other forms and other places in one way or another kind of come to rest in that basic form. And it could, it doesn't have to be a form, it could be like we've got here a little set of exercises or something. Which approach you take, whether this is a time for really investigating and thinking, well, I'm going to get to the bottom of this one, or whether this is just, no, actually, I feel like I just want to freewheel a bit, is, of course, a very personal thing. So, in the first instance, it's just a matter of arriving, bringing your attention into your body, ideally working down towards your feet because it's Tai Chi and we want to establish that foundation, getting a sense for how you're feeling. Does the movement feel stiff or flowing, or does it feel like sort of quiet and settled, or is there a little bit of kind of even agitation, or maybe just a kind of like energy there, or whatever? And any obvious tight spots. And just check your feet. Have a look down at your toes. Are they in the right place? Or have a look in the camera if you can see yourself in the camera. Well, you probably can't actually. You can see me. But you constantly see people when they're doing Tai Chi, even during a form, sort of that, oh yeah, that's out, and so on and so forth. Most experienced players, it just becomes part of how you do things. It doesn't interrupt the flow. It doesn't interrupt the pace of the movement. Remember, it's weight a little bit forwards, hips dropping back, giving you this nice upright stance. Pelvis hanging. And that can be quite difficult. And I think, as I've said to people before, it's worth thinking about trying some of these movements in the chair. You can't do this one in the chair, by the way, because you just keep wrapping your fingers on the chair. Unless you've got a stool, I suppose you could do that. It has to be the right height, though. But just sitting, and I think it's something I've taken you through before, where you just tighten up around lower back and buttocks and then suddenly release and get that feeling of dropping. It's worth doing that in the chair, because in the chair we really can't drop any further, unless a bit of slight drop, but not a lot. So we really have to focus on the feelings, the qualities that we can then bring in to the standing practices. and raising your arms a little. This one you can do in the chair. I'm not sure how well it works, to be honest. I've tried it a few times. I'm kind of a bit torn on this one, but you can at least, I'll show you, you can at least avoid putting your hands, which is an advantage. When I do, carry on standing, but I'll just show you, when I do this, I'm right at the front of the chair, and I'm support. I've got about a third of my weight forward. I can do this okay. It's all right. So this is one that you might want to do. And again, you know, you can play around with it. Most of these exercises are adaptable to the chair. They change because it's a different environment. You can always, if you're interested in that, you can always take a look on YouTube, the YouTube channel, where there's always a recent session from the seated practices as well as from the standing. So you just dip into those and think, oh, how's he doing this one, and so on and so forth. Okay. So just looking your weight forwards and backwards to sort of orientate yourself in the space that you're in. Always taking the awareness from the ground upwards now. Feeling that you're pivoting, rocking, if you like, on your ankles. Not so much that you're doing this, and not this, but very much. You see, when I stand here, you look at my hand and my arm. When my arms just drop naturally, my middle finger is on the seam of my trousers and goes straight down, pointing down towards my ankle. And if I was, it was my thumb, you can see that sort of pushing the chest out a bit. I can go, it'd be middle ring or little finger, but not this. Now I'm hunched over. When I do the rocking, you see, if I don't let my arm move, then it's basically the same: shoulder, hip, middle finger, ankle. Moving from side to side. And then combining them, so you're going around the outline of your stance. So you go from the edge of one foot back towards the heel, across towards the opposite heel, and then forward along the edge, and then across the ball of the foot. It's nice and easy. So it may look as though I'm exaggerating a bit because my shoulders, even my knees, are moving quite a lot, but actually it's not. I'm just on the edge of what is comfortable. Change direction every now and then. I'm taking you through this quite quickly. I mean, in your own time, you can just sort of like spend as much time as you like, and it's even the kind of thing. I mean, this is the sort of exercise you could probably get away with doing in the supermarket queue or something. People would probably think you've again sort of had a few too many warm whiskies or something like that, but yeah, that would be too worried. And then you've got this circle. Change it so it gets smaller and smaller, like water running down the drain, running down a plug hole, until eventually you can just come to rest. I'm going to take you through an exercise that I really only do with people with a little bit of experience. It's one that's often done by Grandmaster Chen Xiaowang as part of his standard warm-up. And it's really using the pelvis. Just tilt your pelvis forwards and then backwards. So as you do this, you feel a kind of extension, like there's a thread of elastic going down the front and then going down the back, and then that contracts and pulls you the other way. So it's really the pelvis rocking on the legs. And then side to side. And this is really important because if you look at the shape I'm making, from my head down through to the middle of the pelvis, there's a very gentle curve. It's not this or this. So I go across and I just let my body curve a little bit, but not like that. It's quite a small movement. So you imagine the vertebrae in your spine just kind of moving a little bit. And then we combine those two movements. So then you go forwards and likewise on the forward movement, it's this, not this. And the reason I'm explaining this, the reason I don't teach it to beginners is when it's done, it looks as though I'm doing this. But I'm not, I'm moving from the pelvis. So this is sort of what it looks like. If I put my hand here, you'll see the movement there. So it's quite a small movement, and effectively your head is moving within that first circle that we did around the feet. And Grandmaster Chen does this 300 times in each direction. So people tell me, whenever I try and count, I either can count or I can do the exercise well as I can do anyway. But I can't do both at the same time. So I tend not to count, but I don't do anything like 300. But he used it when he injured his back. It was one of the exercises he used to help his back, and it really does help to get the energy in the spine. But again, just make sure you're not just doing this with your neck, because you can damage your neck if you do that. Remember, again, if I put my hands on my pelvis, you'll see how they're moving. In fact, the arms should just hang down and follow the movement around. It's almost like I'm looking around for something now. I can't see that. If you imagine you've got something like a plant stem, and it kind of curves over, maybe there's a breeze curving it over, and it's fine. When the breeze stops, it will spring back. But if it goes right to there, it's probably going to snap and go back in the other direction. So again, I'm taking you through this quite quickly, but it's an exercise that does repay careful attention. And if you have one of those mornings when you wake up and you feel as though somebody's poured concrete into your back or something like that, then these little exercises I've just taken you through, the faster ones and the circling around the feet, and then this one, are actually quite good exercises to just gently ease the back. It doesn't have a particular name, but Kuala Neva, my main teachers in the Chen style, have taken to call it rolling. And when they do sort of like weekends and things like that, they always use this one in the morning. Nothing is forced, remember. So everybody actually in the class, you're quite experienced, and it looks as though you're doing this just fine. Don't go too far. Remember, smaller is better than bigger. So it can be quite interesting to do it so that there's hardly any movement. I mean, I see a lot of people in seminars kind of doing this, but it really isn't the way the exercise should should be done. And anybody watching on YouTube, just bear that in mind. You shouldn't be feeling anywhere along the length of the spine any kind of gripping or tightening. If you are, either make it smaller or else just leave the exercise alone, because nice though it is, it's also very strong. Soften your knees, remember. Okay, and then just shake it out. So just a little extra exercise that's quite nice, done in a small space. And again, you know, having done that exercise for over a fair few years, I find I can stand here and just this, and actually I'm hardly doing anything. I'm not even sure that you would be able to see. I'm just, you know, just this. And sometimes those times when I find my back's a bit tight, I can just do this, just get a little bit of movement in the back, and that can help to ease it. So it's quite a useful exercise. Okay, so back into your stance. If you're shaking your legs out, sinking down and pushing up. So in some ways, it's not dissimilar to one that we've done, which is the swimming dragon exercise, and indeed bear play, making you very aware of very subtle changes and movements and energy within your back. As you push up and sink down, there's various things you can focus on. Make sure you do focus on all of them, really. And again, particularly people who are more experienced, it's easy to sort of think, oh, yeah, of course I do that. But it can be quite surprising. You think, oh yeah, rooting down, I can do rooting down. Yeah. And then you think, I just had to take a look at it. Actually, I'm not rooting down. This is happening, or this is happening. It's like that. Then the feeling of pushing up, and if you have those things in place, if you feel, yeah, that's happening, you can make it more specific. This feeling of movement coming up the middle of the spine, over the crown of your head. And in fact, the meridian, the energy channel that I'm talking about, the governor meridian, finishes in the roof of the mouth. And then going down from the roof of the mouth to the base of the torso, meeting the governor, is the conception vessel. Two quite significant energy channels in the Chinese system, where the upward movement, the governor meridian goes through the crown of the head, is that point that I've pointed out to you before that you're suspended from. So it joins up points and so on and so forth. But perhaps more usefully, it's just a way again of bringing your attention to that essential area of the spine, the area around the spine. Such a significant part of our body. With the central nervous system is there, major blood vessels. It literally is the sort of main street of the body, because the central nervous system links to everything, basically. And there's other things going on in the spine as well. Remember that feeling, especially as you sink down, of when your hips drop back, the way it draws your head and shoulders up. This is a time of year where, you know, things ideally would be slowing down. Things would be sort of settling. We wouldn't have that much on. Of course, it's not like that, but it's a quiet time of year, ideally. And so we tend to get a bit kind of sleepy. Oh, yeah, I don't fancy doing that. And maybe that extra time in bed, or just, just not being as active. It's not a time of year for being as active. But it doesn't mean that we have to just droop, if you see what I mean. And these little exercises for the spine just very gently make sure that, if you like, the energy continues to flow. Now change into the wild goose. I probably quoted it to all of you before, but I do like the passage in a work called The Yellow Emperor's Book of Chinese Medicine. So the kind of root text of all Chinese medicine. It's something like 2,000 years old or thereabouts. But there's a lovely little bit where it's talking about being in line with the seasons. And it says in the summer, you know, you get up early, you're active all day, you go to bed late, and so on and so forth. And then in the spring, again, you get up early and yeah, you're active. You may go to bed a little bit early because it's not quite long hours yet. Likewise in the autumn. But in the winter, you don't get up too early, you don't do too much, you take it easy because that's the sort of right time. And it's thing about being, if you like, in harmony with what's around you. Our practice should reflect that, I think. Now change into the wild goose. Oh, sorry, no, change into the wild goose. Heart in the clouds. And then dragon plucks the stars from the sky. Do one more on each side. And then pushing in four directions. and then changing. Turn. And switch sides. And then add in the turn. We're in a boat in the middle of the lake. Focusing in particular on the way that when your hips go back and then down, they affect your shoulders and your head and your arms, and in particular again on that upward movement. Again, you know, this time of year you can feel sleepy and that. It can feel as though you have to struggle to wake yourself up or just to open up a little bit. But we find with this exercise and the next one, polishing the table, that actually gravity itself will, through working on our hips, help us to get to this more open, softer stance. Don't pull yourself up by your neck. Imagine somebody pressing on the tail of your spine. You feel no tightening in your back or your neck. And then polishing the table. Remember that feeling, that exercise I did with you, the rolling exercise, the new one. The feeling in your back and your spine as you did this. Can you, just through the memory, the visualization, get some of that quality through your spine, but it's actually quite a tricky exercise. Yeah. Spine is often overlooked, I think, in Tai Chi. Put a lot of attention into the legs. The hips. But it's the spine that will connect, the back that will connect to your arms and your shoulders. and indeed to the whole of the upper body. One more time. Okay. And then hands in front of your shoulders, taking a slow run up, as it were, into the bear play. But again, this is just to really get your arms moving. But again, we can imagine that inner orbit, the paired meridians of the governor meridian, the conception vessel, Ren and Du of the Chinese terms. You don't have to follow the meridian. It's just, again, think of these things as I've said before, like reference points on a map or something like that. Turning, letting your weight go into one side. So here, in this leg. And again, that line, shoulder, elbow, hip, foot. And then full bear play. Feel the movement in your back and your spine, your hips. So when we do this, it's a circular movement with the weight moving. The sort of emphasis I always feel is on the downward movement. Like if you were pedaling a bicycle, it would be the downward movement mostly that propels you. Now we're going to make a change in a moment, and I suppose you could argue with this change, the main intent, the main feature is going to be not a downward movement through the circle, but a forwards movement. You might want to just synchronize your movements with mine a little more. That sounds a bit confusing. So on the right, pushing down, but then as you go into your left, make it a forward movement. You can let the arms swing back a little bit. This is circling arms. I've done it before, and sometimes I do this without the weight moving. But because I've just taken you into it from bear play, I've kept the weight moving, which I think is quite a nice way of doing it. Just make sure here, another slight difference between this and bear play is that the hands come more to the center line. You see here, and some people like to do this and they're very particular about it. They say here, you're holding a ball. I don't do it to quite that extent, but they still pass close to each other. So we've gone from having the hands here, which is more in front of the shoulder, to this, which is where you can see there. Actually, my hand would be on the center line, so it draws back to there. It's almost like as my body moves across, the center line sort of captures my hand. The hands don't go above shoulder height. When your hand comes up to here, your elbow drops down. So here, hand is at shoulder height, elbow drops, that brings the hand into the shoulder. Do one more on each side. And stop in the middle here. And then go into stretching between heaven and earth. Dropping down with your weight in the middle, pushing up a little but not locking your knee as you come up. And then as you come up, just let that upward movement pull the opposite heel. So my weight's in my left leg on your right, my right heel on your left has come up. And then I go down in the middle, that pushes the heel down or lowers it down, come up on the other side. But gradually more of your weight going into the leg, but in a narrower stance like this. Make sure that you're avoiding this kind of tendency. Keep the body upright. Which is why you'll often see me, particularly as I go into the step, and I take a slightly wider stance here. So if it suits you to go into the step in, bring your foot in, and then push up. Sink down, step out. This is where I tend to step a bit wider. Not a huge distance. Push up, feel the heel coming up, bring the foot in. Stretching between heaven and earth. Again, if there's a memory of that visualization of the inner orbit up the back and down the front, that too can become part of this and many other exercises. And again, if it's comfortable, you raise your foot. Do one more on each side. Let me shake out. So many of the exercises can be done in such a way that they highlight certain aspects. I've been talking about the back and the spine today, and particularly with that rolling exercise that we did earlier, that obviously focuses on the back and the movement for the pelvis and so on. And next time I might well talk about something different in more or less the same exercises. But what they do is they shine a light. You can use them to shine a light on this, that, or other aspect of the art, which then begins to find its way into other movements. All of the exercises should have that sense of energy in the back in one way or another. All of them should have the sense of the root, etc., etc., etc. So some just lend themselves particularly well to certain descriptions, and that can be a very personal thing, I think. So have one foot forwards, and if it helps you, you can do that little up and down movement that we did a few weeks ago. But remember that ideally you're aiming to be able to feel that sense of dropping without actually having to have physical dropping. We don't want to rely too much on always having to bend the knees or whatever. But also, again, thinking about your back, your spine, how the movement, the energy from the lower part of your body, this very powerful part of the body, with its connection to the ground and the springiness in the legs. You know, when we're all lucky here, we can all got full use of our legs, and they're very powerful things. So how that transmits, how that energy transmits into the upper part of the body. And just raising your toes and your heel. Stepping in. On the other side. And then raising your toes and your heel. And stepping in. And step through. and then going back. Have your right foot forwards. Fisherman cast a net. Pushing away. And repulse the monkey. And then if it suits you, stepping in, just make sure that you put the foot down first, then move the weight, take your time, and maybe even that little bit of coordination between your hand and your foot. Foot extends, hand goes down as the heel goes down, toes go down, and then here, hand goes up, foot comes in, back, going down with the hand, and so on and so forth. There's all sorts of little links you can make. Just aware of the hand in the corner of your eye as it swings up. Okay. Other foot forwards, fisherman cast a net. Again, we've got the root, we've got transfer the weight, of course. That sense of movement of energy that can come through from our back and our spine. The opening and closing of chest and back, especially the upper back. And then pushing away. and then pose to monkey. And understand. Okay. Bring your feet parallel, and sun and moon. So the two circles, the bigger circle with a sense of gathering in. And you may want to just coordinate that with a deep in breath. And then the smaller circle, more aware of the movements within your body. You could think of that inner orbit again, or you could focus particularly on areas that feel a bit stiff, a bit tight, but then back to what we might think of as the more externalized image. So that inner circle is another chance just to sort of appraise, what do I need? What is appropriate? Over a period of time, you could do it as a body scan. You know, you could work from your feet upwards. Once you've got that sense of movement within, it's very much about what is appropriate for you at that time. But notice, you don't have to do it every time, but as you do the bigger circle, if you take a deep breath in, it's always going to be just that sense of sharpness, a clearer feeling. Again, the image I've sometimes used is there's like the spring mist rather than the out breath, which is more like the murky autumn fog. You might apply the same idea to not just the in breath, but that sense of movement, energy coming up from your legs. Do one more round. And then rubbing your hands together. Tapping over your face. Over your head. Shoulder. Your arm. Side. Punch your back. Around your hips. Leg. Belly. And upper part. Okay. And let me just take you through a few rounds of that earlier exercise, the newer one. Remember, this is not really a beginner's exercise. Be really careful with your back, because especially if you have a problem with the spine. You really shouldn't be doing big movements, and you certainly shouldn't be letting your head flop around. It's all from here. You do the sideways movement, you feel the curve through the spine, very, very gentle. Another one of those exercises where hardly any movement is required on any particular thing. I can see some of you moving quite big. You're sort of out there. Look how little my shoulders move. Concentrate on the inner movement and the slight curve through there. Remember, the deeper the curve, the more likelihood that something will go wrong. Same forwards and backwards. The pelvis rocking. And the combination gives us the circular movement. Think of your head moving within this square formed by the feet. So somebody were very, very gently massaging your spine. And indeed your ribs, actually. And of course, we do it in both directions. No tightening, no gripping in your back. And that was just a little reminder of what we did earlier, but now sinking down and embrace tiger, return to mountain. As always, if you don't feel an exercise is working for you, feel free to contact me and we can try and sort it out. But don't force anything in your body. And then just settle. Lovely. Thank you very much as always. So